Most coding courses are like you're learning how to cook a dish that you never had. It would make sense to eat the dish, have experience eating the food, then trying to cook it, right? You go into the kitchen, you have all the ingredients, and you're trying to make something you don't even know what it looks like, you don't even know what it tastes like. That's going to be tough. And a lot of courses, I'm kind of guilty of that too. In my Python course, it's kind of like that. I jump right into teaching Python. How do you write variables? How do you do if-else statements? How do you do these things in Python? But what I realize is students struggle in the initial part of the program, right? A lot of times that's the case. Once you get a hang of the first part, just setting it up, environment and things, like learning Python is actually really easy. So I decided to create a section that is pretty much getting ready, giving you a high level experience of programming. What is it that the code we write, what's the relationship with things and things like that. So this video is part of that series, one of the early videos, and in this case we're going to see the relationship between code and program. Program is the thing that you use, right? The application that you use are the program, but the code is what turns into a program. So I just want to give you like brief introduction and just show you a couple of code and how it turns into a program. It's just high level stuff. So make sure you follow the whole playlist. I'm going to put it in a playlist and I put it into the description. So go through a bunch of the videos so you have a big picture, no matter where you are learning automation or coding, right? No matter what language you're trying to learn. You might be trying to learn JavaScript, you might be trying to learn Java or Python. Of course, I recommend Python. But so watch the whole thing, the whole playlist, so you get a good idea of, what are those different basic things we need to know before we even write some code. All right, so let's jump right into it. This right here, what you see on your screen, is one of the first examples we're going to see. It's just a simple to-do app, and you are used to using things like this. You open a browser. I'm in Chrome right now. You go to a particular address. In this case, you see the IP address. This is local because this application is running on my local machine. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But you open a browser, you go to a particular URL, and you use a tool. This is a to-do list application. It's a website or a web application. Right? When these days we don't really say website, we say web application because it's just complicated. It does a bunch of things. You have a mobile application, that's an application running on your mobile devices. You have a web application that you access through a browser, aka a website, or you have a desktop application that is application that you run on your machine. All of those things are different kinds of application, but at the end of the day, they're built with code. So this one, that you are most comfortable with is web applications. And it's an application. You have a to-do list, you can add an item, you can go to a home page, you can create a new task and things like that, right? So how is this built? When we're looking at this, the technology, you have no idea. You wouldn't know how this is built. You know the basic things. You know there is a technology called HTML, right? Anything you see in a browser, the way it looks right here is a combination of three things: HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. HTML gives it the structure, CSS gives it like the color and makes it look pretty, JavaScript makes it interactive, right? When you like a lot of things. This one probably doesn't have any JavaScript or very little JavaScript. Other than that, because in the browser you know those three things exist: JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. That's the only thing you know. In the back end, you have no idea what kind of code it is used. That's the beauty of it, right? Until you learn how to code, you don't really need to know how the back end is working, what the technology for this is. So now when we go to the code, this is the code that makes it happen like that, right? I'm just going to go to the home page just to show you. I'm going to make a change and I'm going to show it to you. So this particular application that I'm showing you is a Python application with a Flask framework. So it's a bunch of different things coming together. Python is what's going to control what goes where, the logic. When you click on a button, it puts that information and saves it. When you open the page, it shows you what it needs to show. It knows who you are, and all of the logic, the thinking is happening with Python. Python is the programming language that's in the back end. So when you're learning how to write Python, you're going to learn how to write this. Right now, you look at this is gibberish. Obviously, right? Because you don't speak the language, you don't know Python. Right now, if I come here and speak with my native language, if I say that, you have no idea what I just said, unless you speak the language, right? If you happen to be from that region and you know the language, you understand that. Other than that, what I just said, you have no clue. Same thing here. This is Python. Python is a language. Unless you know the language, this is going to be gibberish. But by the end of this course, that's what you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to see this and know exactly what's going on, and you're going to be able to write this, right? So back to the point though, this along with a bunch of files, this is just one file. So the whole application is all those things working together. It's a bunch of files that do different things. Each file has its own purpose. A lot of those are Python files. Then there's Docker and a bunch of things, right? So all of those things working together becomes an application. They become something useful. So this is just one of them. This is just the entry point that has all the URLs and things like that. Then if we go to templates, you'll see HTML. This is the stuff that gets displayed in the browser. So all of those things work together and make it happen. happen. Now, if I make a change, a code change, the easiest to display is, if you notice, this is like yellow, green background, right? Let's go and change it. I'm going to just come here and just change it to this fancy blue or green. I come here and I hit refresh. That is changed. What did I do? I literally come here and I change the code. This is fancy because I'm using an IDE, like the application that I'm using knows code. So the color, like, let me select by clicking and stuff, but normally you would put a code. This is a code for what the color should be, right? This is HTML, CSS, things like that. It's not even Python. This part is not Python. All right. So just to summarize this example so I can go to other examples, a bunch of files working together will end up giving you this functionality. Pretty straightforward. And then there's a lot of process that actually makes it happen. Right now, everything's running on my laptop, but there's a process. Now I wrote the code, I built the application, I ran it on my laptop, I tested it. Now, how do I make it so that other people can use that application? How do I make it like todo.com? Right? That's a whole lot of process. I'll take this code, I'll put it into Git. From Git, I take the code and put it into a server, it gets tested. And after it's tested, it probably gets put into another server that my customers can access and use it to do, right? That's the entire process. There's writing the code and there's taking the code and making it available. A whole different thing, right? As an engineer, that's the whole thing you're going to learn. First, you're going to learn how to write code, the basics, right? Especially when we look at this Python, in this particular course, you're going to learn how to write Python code. You're not going to learn how to write a web application. This is a web application, but the code, like individual things, like the things right here, this line, what does that mean? What does this mean? What does a return mean? What does def mean? You're going to learn all of that. But then depending on how interested you are, if you work with me, you're going to learn the whole process of, deploying an application and things like that. That's called CI/CD. But that's beyond coding, right? That's after the code. So if you are interested, of course, keep that in mind. Like, you're going to grow that way. You're not just going to learn how to write code. All right. So another example. Let's look at this application. A little bit more application. There's a little bit more complicated, a lot more into it. It's an e-commerce application, right? This is an e-commerce application. You can add items to the cart. You can go to cart and you can check out and all of that, right? This is an application that you're used to seeing. A lot of times you use an e-commerce application. Now, again, the only thing you know about this application, at least guaranteed, is using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? Those three technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Those are like languages. They're all language. Well, CSS is not a language. HTML, there's a debate, it's a language or not, but the word itself, HTML, hypertext markup language. The name itself has language in there, but people argue it's a language, it's not a language. I'm like, okay, yeah. But anyways, so this here, if I was to show you where that's coming from, now I have this folder, localhost. This one, again, is running on my machine. This is another application that's running on my machine, but all the files are coming from here. And this is not a Python application. This is a PHP application, another language. Python is a language like English. PHP is another language like Spanish, right? You need to learn each one of them individually. There's relationships. A lot of languages do things a similar way, but you're going to have to learn the syntax. The concept is the same. Programming languages, when you learn one language versus another language, the concept, doing conditionals, doing loops, the whole idea of programming is the same, but the syntax, how you write it. If you want to do a certain thing, how do you do it in this language versus how do you do it in that language? Those are the kind of things you're going to learn as you go. So this particular application, it is a PHP. So all this code, you can see it here in the little preview. I can open it. This is like a login module. I can do right click, open with, let me just open it with Sublime. So you can see this is more code. This is not Python, right? I can read this. I'm not a PHP guy, but I can still read it and get a gist of what's happening. I wouldn't know exactly everything that's going on, like those built-in functions and things like that, but I can get an idea of what's going on. That's what happens when you learn programming. You can read most languages. You might not know the details of everything that's going on in there. Anyways, the idea is collection of files, a collection of different code ends up giving you a user interface like this, giving you an application. So those are applications web applications that I gave you an examples of, but how about applications that you download? That's the same thing. Somebody wrote the code and you download it onto your laptop and you can run it. So this application here, Chrome itself, right? Google creates Chrome. You go to a website using other browsers and you download Chrome. When you download Chrome, you're downloading a bunch of files. Let me show you that also. So if you go to applications, right, in your system, I'm using Mac, but the idea is exactly the same on Windows, right? It's pretty much the same. When there are differences, I'll show both things. For example, in the next video, I'm going to show it on Windows. I have a Windows ready just right here to show you. So I'm just keeping it on a Mac because the idea is exactly the same. So when you download Chrome, like you're going to go to applications, you see all your applications here. There's Google Chrome right there. If you just double click it, you open it. But if you right click and you do show package content, content on a Mac. It's a little unique. It comes as a package. It's a bunch of files in there. You don't get to see the actual code in this case because it's intellectual property. That's how the code works, right? They don't want to show you how they build the whole thing. So there is a whole process. They package it. It's compiled code. So you don't get to see the actual line by line like the web applications that we saw. But the idea is just a bunch of files working together, making Chrome happen. Now, what we talked about so far, all those examples are applications that have a graphical user interface or UI or GUI. You're going to hear those words a lot. The UI this, UI that, GUI this, GUI this. It's actually GUI, graphical user interface, but we always just say UI because UI is so much easier to say. So applications, the ones you saw are UI applications. They actually have something to see, but you might have code that don't have a UI. It's just doing its thing in the background. It is magical. It's really useful, but there's nothing to see. I'll show you a couple of examples of those also before we wrap up. So if I was to open one of my IDEs, Cursor, this is actually an IDE and a AI IDE. So here I have 3 files, right? I'm going to zoom right here. I'm going to show you that file. I have 3 folders. File cleaner, file generator, hello world example. Like for the first one, the easy one, hello world, right? This is a Python script. You're going to learn, this is one of the first ones you're going to write, hello world for some reason. So this code is really not that useful, but it is code. It is an application. It's just one single file. But what is it designed to do? It's designed to just print hello world. So we can execute this. Right now, I'm just going to use this run Python file and it's just going to run it. It's going to print hello world. Meaningful? No. But the idea is there's no UI. There's no pretty thing to see. What we see here, where I open the application, where I open the script, this is called an IDE, integrated development environment. It's just an application to open files, right? Code file, but it knows what code is. So it'll give you these colors when you're writing the code. It just gives you superpowers, but it's just an application. Just like you have some slides, you're going to open it in PowerPoint. If you have a CSV file, you're going to open it in Excel. If you have a document, you're going to open it in Microsoft Word, right? You have a particular type of file and there's a tool to open it. So we have a Python file. It's a type of file, just like a text file or a CSV. It's a Python file and you want to open it and there are tools to open it. This one is cursors like VS Code. That's all it is. It's nothing fancy. It's just a type of file. It's a code file and there are applications to open it so you can work on it. Makes it easier for you to work on it. If I open this in like a normal text editor, I'm not going to get these colors and things like that. There's a lot more magic that's happening here. We're going to talk about that in another video. That's part of the introduction. Anyway, so I just want to bring that up so you don't think this is something crazy going on here, something fancy. It's not. It's just we just opened it. Now, this is one program that just runs, not that useful. Now, let's look at another program that might be useful, right? Let's say we have this file generator. We have this file called file generator, and what it does is going to go and create a bunch of files. So right now I create a dummy thing, so it's going to create a bunch of files. Let's run it. Actually, I'm going to go to CD file generator. By the way, we're going to talk about the command line. Right now I'm running commands. I know that's scary. Don't worry about it. Literally the next video is introduction to the command line. We're going to talk about that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to execute. In fact, let me do it here. I'm going to execute this file. I'm going to right click and run file. Not right click, just click the drop down. So I just executed this file. What is this file do? What is it designed to do? Right now it's creating a bunch of files. You can see it here, they're showing up. So this could be something that goes and gets some information. Let's say you want to get some stock prices, right? Every second you want to go get Apple's stock price. So you write the code, you write the Python script to do that, and you run it. When you run it, it's going to go get the information and do what it's supposed to do. In this case, get the information, creates the file. Get the information, create the file. So you could come in a human runs it like this, or you can schedule it. So we run every day at a specific time, or every day from this time to that time. So the idea is you write code that is functional, that's doing a certain things, and then it all depends how you use it. You can use it, you can create a front end for it, graphical user interface or UI for it. You can create that if it makes sense. In this case, it doesn't. All I have to do is schedule it, so it would run every day and do a certain thing. Last example, we have another file here. It says file cleaner, and let's say this job is to go and clean files. I have this guy going every day and downloading stock prices or downloading the weather or something like that. But after 10 days, after a month, I don't need that data, right? So I don't have to manually go clean it up. So I can write another program, another Python script that will go and delete old files. So that's what this is. And this is the kind of stuff you're going to learn. So what does import mean? What does this def mean when you create a function? What does this mean? If you want to delete a file, how do you delete a file? If you want to create a file, how do you create a file? Things like that. So if I was to run this, I'm going to run this file. It's going to go and delete all those files that would just create it. It went and deleted all those files. So what you're going to do is you're going to schedule this so it would run on its own on a schedule or something like that. So I think this video is a little too long for what it's meant to be. Apologize for that if that was annoying, but if you find it useful, actually, let me know, put in a comment or something like that. But I just want to give you an idea of what you're getting into. You're going to be learning how to write code. What does that mean? Like, okay, I come here, I write this, I write that. Then what happens to it? Sometimes that code runs in the background. If you're learning it to become a QA, a lot of it is going to be in the background. Like, just like I just run the script, you come in the command line, you run the script, but this script is going to go and make sure some stuff is working. That's what it's designed to do, right? That's what we're going to write. Or you can build an application like this, something that has a front end that you're going to run, execute, and use. So that's the whole point. Let's go to the next one and get even more warmed up preparing to learn how to code. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you put a comment down there. Let me know, was this helpful? Should I create things like this that are really basic? Was it too long for what I'm trying to communicate? I'd love to hear from you. I like to get feedback, and make sure you subscribe. All I do is teach. Like, everything I do in this channel is teaching QA automation. I'm getting into AI now, so I'm just going to help you grow. So make sure you give me a subscribe and like this video. Let the algorithm know this is good and worth recommending it to other people. So I appreciate your support. And let's go and look at the next thing is terminal, right? You want to get familiar with how to use a terminal. When you're running programs, now we saw what code looks like, and everything we do when you're learning how to program is in the terminal. Like the way I did it in this video, when I click on the little play icon or run icon and click it, you're not going to do that. So I want you to get really comfortable with the terminal. So the next video in this series is going to be about the terminal. So it's going to show up on the screen right here or right here, one of the two, and go ahead and I'll see you there. We'll talk more about terminal and we'll just get warmed up to get you going how to learn to program.